civil unrest, university campus, hundreds of New York police officers, hundreds. Let me show you some of the footage. I will get into the background and the update. Here it is.
Moved onto the campus, but they have moved in. Students have been warned by text message to shelter in place for their own safety. We're about a half block away. You're seeing what we are seeing right now. They just made entry. They just went into that building. So what we can learn from that is that room at least is safe for them to go into. Clear it out. That is the goal. The ultimate goal of this is to retake control of Hamilton.
It is a very sad reality, is it not? I would like to provide some context before we continue to dive into the insanity of local and national policy. You see, there are many who would like you to believe that Palestinians and Jews on that campus should be against each other. There are many who would prefer you to subscribe to a narrative that dismisses the cause creating the effect. You see, the cause that's creating the effect has to do with the powers that be, the powers that have always been. Individuals who are in leadership, individuals who are in military control, creating policy across this planet, policy adversarial to the humanitarian nature of most. See, there's a reason why pro-Palestinian student groups and pro-Jewish student groups actually coordinate together on campus. There is a reason why 80% of Israeli citizens are antithetical to Benjamin Netanyahu. You see, he's the guy who did not protect them from the original attack from the terrorist group Hamas. But there's a narrative that shows significance to the narrative from America during a terrorist attack here, that perhaps it was allowed. Perhaps it's being utilized as the proxy to eliminate Palestinians in Gaza. Very clearly, genocide is happening, in my opinion. 70% of those who are killed in Gaza, the Palestinians, are women and children. They have no weapons. They are not trained enemy combatants. With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show. There were violent clashes between pro-Palestinian encampment counter-protesters and counter-protesters at UCLA overnight. The LAPD said it was simply responding to the university's request, quote, due to multiple acts of violence. The university canceled all classes today. Meanwhile, police said 173 individuals were arrested at the City College of New York and 109 at Columbia University last night. The total of 282 arrests after special police units breached the occupied Hamilton Hall. Columbia said it was left with no choice but to call NYPD and has asked the police to maintain presence on campus until May 17th, 2 days after commencement. All academic activities, including finals for schools on the Morningside Heights campus, will be fully remote for the remainder of the semester, the school said this afternoon. Put up the mayor. You see, individuals like him make things worse by intentionally manipulating the narrative against students, scholars, and organizers. So NBC News reports that New York City Mayor Eric Adams said in a briefing this morning that while some students were involved in the occupation of Hamilton Hall at Columbia University, they were, quote, led by individuals not affiliated with the university. Keep his picture up. Let me explain the game he's playing with that terminology. Many students will work with allied organizations in order to organize other students. It happens on the campus that I teach at as a professor. It happens at Columbia University. It happens everywhere. These groups are invited by the students in order to help in the organizational effort. And so the mayor is well aware of this. His comment and commentary is to spin that narrative. Police on Monday cleared out protest encampments of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Yale, and University of Connecticut. But encampments remain at more than 40 colleges and universities nationwide. Protesters also clashed with police at the University of Wisconsin-Madison encampment. Here it is.
Breaking news of demonstrations taking place at college campuses all across the country, from New York to LA. Right now, we're focused on the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where an encampment has been set up for the past 3 days. This morning, police went in and started taking down tents there. That is creating some tense moments right now between police and demonstrators. Let's listen to live coverage from our Madison affiliate, WMTV.
Yes, now we can hear you, Brooklyn. You said that police are.
Can you hear me now?
Police are making another advancement, Brooklyn. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Okay. Yeah. So they are. They're making another advance into the crowd. As you can see here, it seems there is one tent remaining. There was 3 tents about 2 minutes ago, and they've since made arrests. You can see another arrest happening now. I've been told from protesters that there has been at least 3 professors here from the university arrested today, and I have firsthand noticed a few arrests being made, at least 4 or 5. Now it looks like I mentioned there's 1 tent left. They are still chanting, and it seems that the group of protesters just is continuing to grow as those officers are kind of working their way through.
I need you to hear that part in your soul. It seems the group of protesters continues to grow. What are they protesting? They are protesting the policy of murder. I must admit, I could not think of a more worthy protest than to protest an actual policy of murder. The nuance is there as well. For example, I can't stand up for humanitarian rights, but ignore the reality that many groups have been in this, well, let's just call it in the middle of the war against humanity. Black people have been at the other end of that war against humanity. We depended on allies to support us in the civil rights movement led by Dr. King and others. I'm a member of the NAACP, one of the groups that was birthed from the need for Black folk to have a stronger voice, not only inside of the local communities and businesses, but in politics as well. Well, guess who co-founded the NAACP? Jewish men. Freedom-loving Jewish men. You don't like it? Fine. Deal with history, not with me. At least 12 people arrested, including multiple who were considered to be resisting arrest, as police dispersed an encampment of protesters after 7 a.m. The UW-Madison Police Department said Wednesday 4 members of law enforcement were injured according to their report during the clashes and the protesters at the UW-Madison campus. Police said in a statement, 3 Dane County deputies were injured, quote, all directly related to the physical resistance. And 1 state trooper, quote, sustained injuries when a protester struck his head or their head with a skateboard. The statement said, it is not clear how many are affiliated with UW-Madison, police said. This was a similar narrative that came out of Emory University when state troopers descended on that university, a private college, calling in a state police force that by statute had no authority to do what they did. Congressman Hank Johnson pointed that out in his statement. They come to the campus. They spin a narrative that the vast majority of those arrested had no affiliation with the campus. Well, a local newspaper did a fact check, come to find out 25 out of 28 were affiliated with the campus. My point is, don't believe the initial narrative that comes out, because typically they provide the narrative and then hope that no one does the fact check. Earlier Wednesday morning, protesters clashed with police at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, as police carried out arrests, cleared out an encampment by pro-Palestinian demonstrators on campus. Protesters at University of Wisconsin-Madison and dozens more across the country have been calling for their universities to divest funding, supporting Israel. Police can be seen pushing, screaming protesters, some with signs and some wearing masks, back and tearing down tents. Back in New York, KRNY demands charges be dropped against student protesters arrested at Columbia and other colleges. KRN New York Executive Director Afaf Nashir said in a statement today, quote, "It is sad but not surprising that Columbia University and CCNY officials would rather unleash the NYPD on their own students rather than simply meet their demand to divest from the Israeli government and its genocide in Gaza." You know, that's really the crux of the matter. You see, if policy changes, you may get a change in the actual bombing and killing of citizens. If the American policy changes, if university policies change, but as long as these policies stay in place, as long as these policies remain active, the Israeli government, they're not concerned about the PR in America. But those policies have real effect, not only in America, but in Israel, also against the Israeli government. That is the aim of the protest. So when we talk about what is their why is very specific. Their why is about policy. And they have a right to demand these things. Who pays for those universities to operate? Those students pay for those universities to operate. For a public university, who's also paying for that public university to operate? We are, taxpayers. And so every single person on that campus who has paid tuition, who pays taxes, we have a right to say where that money goes. We have an opinion. There's more. Instead of joining students calling for an end to war, profiteering, our universities are profiting from ethnic-based massacres. Nashir said, as students call for a ceasefire and peace in Israel and Gaza, these colleges were, quote, inviting violence onto campuses with police arrest, end quote. Quote, it is not complicated. Suspensions, expulsions, and even violent arrests will not end campus protest. Students have made it clear that they require a true commitment to ending complicity in genocide. KRNY commends their pursuit to do their part in ending America's support of Israel's continued genocide. We fully expect these same schools to one day celebrate these students the same way students who occupied Hamilton Hall decades ago are celebrated today. I have to remind people that during the era of Dr. King, when NBC took a poll and said, how popular is Dr. King, the nonviolent humanitarian who's anti-war, anti-racism, 6% of America had a favorable opinion of the nonviolent, peace-loving Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, over 90% of America says he was right. We were wrong. All right, Wosny, thoughts here.
I would just like our listeners to understand where some of these tensions are happening, specifically at Columbia, which we can all agree has kind of been ground zero of these campus uprisings, right? Columbia University, Ivy League university, markets itself to its student bodies and potential, people that are applying to attend the school as this very progressive school with this history of student activism and supporting said activism. They talk about that sit-in from 1968 very proudly, and that's how they market themselves to a student body. However, there is a donor class aspect too, and these donors, these wealthier people, these alum, who also contribute to Columbia's bottom line, because in 2024 here in America, everything has to be business-based and money-based. And that's also a constituency that they have to speak to. So the student body obviously is against, any investment in Israel or the Israeli government and their prosecution of this war, and the donor class. The students are obviously not having it. So they decided to demonstrate against it. And the donor class has been very public in the media. I'm sure they're calling these administrators and, the trustees personally and saying, you guys need to do something immediately. Let's remind folks, they could have just ignored this, right? Like realistically, they overreacted. The encampment was this little thing happening. The students were just trying to make their voices heard to their school. They weren't courting media attention. They weren't doing any of that stuff. But because of these, ridiculous overreactions from the donor class, Columbia and the president and the trustees felt like they had to, quote unquote, take action. And because this is a private entity, a private business, essentially, goddamn well, they got NYPD on speed dial. And let's face it, these guys love nothing more. How else do they justify these ridiculous budgets in New York City? How else do they justify all the ridiculous armor that they get in NYPD besides having these kind of actions? And of course, NYPD was all too happy to do this. And it's my opinion, Dr. Richey, that because of the ridiculously robust, reaction to what these students were doing, I think word spread and it made other people want to get involved as far as student activism across the country. And now you're getting what you see. And I think also what folks need to realize is that there is just a generational divide as far as how people see the Israeli government, okay? Like there are people in their 80s who the Holocaust is within living memory, and their kids who are very close to them and their nieces and nephews who are very close to them can feel that and understand that, and will always see Israel as this refuge from Jewish oppression. And so everything done in service of protecting Israel can be justified, even the massacres of women and children in Gaza. But younger people don't feel that way. They don't see Israel as the little engine that could, where even you could say in 1973, they were on the brink of the country no longer existing. Younger people see Israel for what it is today, a power in their region, completely backed by the strongest government, the strongest military in the history of the universe, folks. The United States government. This isn't some little engine that could. They've got allies in Saudi Arabia. They've got allies in the Emiratis. This isn't the Israel of old. And I think younger people see the Israeli government for what it is, a major power in their region who is violently tamping down resistance in the Gaza Strip. And I think that's the reaction that we're seeing.
We will update, obviously, as it continues, guaranteed to be continuation. And the spirit of these protesters who are standing up for humanitarian rights and also anti-war will only be ignited more by this kind of heavy-handedness from the government.